Betrayal in the Shadow. Sophie and Daniel had been married for 7 years, their love once strong and unwavering. They had built a life together, weekend getaways, late-night talks, and dreams of the future. But as time passed, Sophie began to sense a distance growing between them. Daniel's late nights at work became more frequent, his phone always turned away when she was near. One evening, as rain drizzled against their apartment window, Sophie's heart pounded with uncertainty. She had borrowed Daniel's tablet to check her emails when a message notification popped up. Her hands trembled as she read, "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." Her stomach twisted. The sender's name was unfamiliar, but the message was clear. A wave of disbelief and heartbreak crashed over her. Confronting Daniel was inevitable. That night, when he walked through the door, she held up the tablet with the message displayed. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice steady but cold. Daniel's face paled. For a moment, he opened his mouth to deny it, but the guilt in his eyes spoke louder than words. Silence stretched between them, thicker than the storm outside. "I never meant to hurt you," he whispered, but it was too late. Trust, once shattered, could never be pieced back together the same way. Shattered promises. Sophie stared at Daniel, waiting for an explanation, but none came. Just silence, heavy and suffocating. The man she had trusted, the man she had built her life with, had betrayed her. "Who is she?" she repeated, her voice sharper this time. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. "Her name is Claire. We met at work. It just happened." Sophie let out a bitter laugh. "It just happened. You don't accidentally betray someone, Daniel." He lowered his gaze. "I didn't plan this. I love you, Sophie. I do, but somewhere along the way, we lost something." "And he hesitated. "I felt alive again." His words cut deeper than she expected. Was that it? Had she become dull, predictable, unworthy of excitement? The realization stung. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't break, not in front of him. "So, what now?" she asked. "Do you love her?" Daniel hesitated too long. That pause, that single moment of indecision, was her answer. Sophie inhaled sharply. Her decision made. "I deserve better than this." Daniel's eyes widened. "Wait, Sophie, let us talk about this." But she was already walking away, because no matter how much she had loved him, love was nothing without trust. That night, as she packed her bags, she realized something. This wasn't the end. This was her beginning. Rebirth from ruins. Sophie walked out of their apartment with her suitcase in hand, her heart heavy yet strangely light. The pain was unbearable, but deep inside, she knew this was her chance to start over. She rented a small loft downtown, a space that was entirely hers. The first nights were the hardest. The silence felt oppressive, the absence of Daniel a ghost that haunted her every thought. But as the days passed, she found solace in the quiet. She no longer had to wonder where he was or who he was with. The weight of uncertainty was gone. One evening, while sipping wine on her tiny balcony, Sophie's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Sophie, I miss you. Can we talk?" "Daniel." She stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. A few weeks ago, she would have responded in an instant, desperate for answers, for closure. But now, she wasn't sure he deserved a response at all. Instead, she deleted the message. That weekend, she booked a flight to Italy, a place she had always wanted to visit but never had the chance. She wandered through the streets of Florence, tasted wine in the vineyards of Tuscany, and, for the first time in years, felt truly free. One evening, as she sat in a small cafe watching the sunset, a man approached her table. "Excuse me," he said with a warm smile, "may I join you?" Sophie hesitated for only a second before nodding. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. A new chapter. Sophie looked up at the man who had just approached her. He had kind eyes and a confident, easygoing presence. Something about him felt refreshing. "Sure," she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. He smiled and sat down. "I am Luca." He introduced himself, his Italian accent smooth and warm. "Sophie." They talked for hours, sharing stories about travel, life, and dreams they had yet to chase. For the first time in a long while, Sophie didn't feel like a woman picking up the pieces of a broken heart. She felt like a woman who was rediscovering herself. As the night deepened, Luca glanced at her and said, "You know, sometimes endings are just disguised beginnings." Sophie smiled. swirling the last sip of wine in her glass. "I think you might be right." And as she walked back to her hotel that night, the city lights casting a golden glow on the cobblestone streets, she realized she wasn't just healing, she was thriving. Daniel was her past, but her future, that was entirely her own.